why I pulled you over? Because you're a Reuben.
There's going to be a symposium or a presentation on president, or attempted president, I should say.
Yes.
James Cox, who is a Daytonian for whom Cox Media is named for. The man all started here, almost made it to the White House, but not quite. So tell me a little bit about what you guys have got going on, and just a little bit about James Cox.
Sure. Well, this is the hometown of Warren G. Harding. He actually came to fame through the newspaper industry here with the Marion Star, or the Marion Daily Star at the time. And unique thing, this campaign is the first time that we've had two people from the same state in the same industry running for political office. So it was an interesting time to be in Ohio, both for Warren G. Harding and for the Cox campaign and for all Ohioans. Again, this is the third annual Warren G. Harding Symposium. So each year we've had something different. Started with a book by a lawyer and author in Cleveland, James Robinault, Sex and Espionage in the White House, the Harding years. And each year we've had a different topic, and with this being a political or presidential election year, decided to focus in on the 1920 campaign. Well, leading up to that, as people may be well aware, James Cox was the sitting governor and had been governor of the state of Ohio for 2 terms. He was also representative to the House of Representatives from Ohio. So he had been elected by Ohioans 3 different times. So it was a good bet to carry Ohio. Was important in the day, as it is today, that this guy would do well for the Democratic ticket. But unfortunately, that didn't come to pass. It was actually a bit of a landslide with Harding versus Cox, with Harding carrying over 60% of the vote, and James Cox didn't even carry his home state of Ohio. And I think a little bit of that was looking at the research. People were a little tired of World War I and wanted just a return to normalcy, which was Harding's campaign slogan. So James Cox was kind of on the wrong side of things, and particularly the one thing that they differed in terms of their political stance was the League of Nations, whether the U.S. should join the League of Nations or not join the League of Nations. James Cox wanted to join the League of Nations, thought it was a good idea for us to stand with our allies in the war and, make peace, and Harding was opposed to that. And that's really probably one of the tipping points in terms of other issues of the day, such as women's suffrage, whether you're pro-women's suffrage or anti, both of them kept kind of quiet about that. Kind of like controversial topics today, political candidates don't address those things. So
Sure.
They were doing the same things, back then. So really what we're trying to do is kind of recreate the fervor around the election in 1920. So the opening night of the Harding Symposium is being done at the historic Harding Hotel. Wasn't named that then. And we're doing a historical reenactment. So we have a gentleman from the Ohio Historical Society playing Harding's campaign manager by the name of Harry Dougherty. And I'll be playing James Cox campaign manager by the name of Edmund Moore. Now, Mr. Moore was a lawyer from the Youngstown area, and he had been very active in the Democratic Party in the state of Ohio for many, many years, and was the head of the Democratic Party here in Ohio. So essentially, again, it was seemed like a no-brainer to bring him on board. There were some issues later, and he was let go in the middle of the campaign as campaign manager. But during that time, on July 20th, when we're actually having the symposium, he was the campaign manager, and James Cox had just finished visiting President Wilson in the White House, talking about different stances he should take. And one of the things they talked about was the League of Nations and how he felt he should, support the League of Nations. So many of James Cox's stance came from President Wilson at the time.
Do we see any parallels or to today's election Romney seems to be running on a return to normalcy type ticket, not overtly, but a lot of things he says are, you want to get back to where we were, and there's a lot of that kind of. Is there any parallels that we can see from this election, or is it just completely different night and day?
Yeah, I think there are a great deal of parallels, and some of the same issues that we were dealing with, we still deal with today, just in different forms. For example, we talk about both candidates were either not saying a lot, or once they felt that the women's vote was going to be ratified, they started pandering to the woman's vote.
Okay.
Going back to some of the campaigns, uh, they were. Tennessee was the 36th state that had to ratify women's suffrage, and that happened in August. So the handwriting was on the wall. So both those guys were talking about at the time, the importance of the women's vote when they both really weren't saying much before. The same could be said of the Hispanic vote or the black vote.
Okay, yeah, that's the next thing I was going to say. You've seen the Dream Act, and some of these things are coming up. Pretty big things
Exactly.
in the election, in the run up to the election. That
Mitt Romney is doing that standard, going and talking to the NAACP, much as George Bush did, and I'm forgetting his name, that ran for the Republican ticket the last time from Arizona.
John McCain.
John McCain, yes.
Probably why he lost. He was pretty forgettable.
But that's very similar. The issues of coming out of a time of war and into a time of peace, very similar issues. Now, how we're reacting to those are a little bit different, but
Okay.
I think history tends to repeat itself, and I think that's what's wonderful about the Harding Symposium is you can take a slice of history and look at it and compare it to today and see there really are a lot of things we can learn from our forefathers.
How powerful of a city was Dayton back then? A lot of people in Dayton, if you've been through Dayton, it's been through a lot in the last 30 years economically. We've been on the cutting edge of losing factories,
Yes.
if you will, as have a lot of Midwestern cities. How powerful was Dayton at that time, and why was it, Governor Cox able to create such a large influence base from Dayton when a lot of people don't perceive it as an important city as it once was?
Well, if you look at Southern Ohio historically, Cincinnati, Dayton, Northern Kentucky, that whole region was the Ohio River drew a lot of attention in terms of transporting goods and services. The population was still migrating from that area. If you look at the U.S. migration from Virginia into Kentucky and northward into Ohio, Southern Ohio, did wield a lot of influence because of the Ohio River and because of those cities near the Ohio River. You talk about industry. A lot of the Ohio as a whole was a lot more industrially powerful because of the number of jobs. Same with Marion.
Mm-hmm.
Marion Power Shovel built the transport for the time, and it was a different era. And yeah, Dayton was extremely powerful in the time, and the Dayton Daily News wielded a lot. Columbus, for example, was not as large of a city at the time, did not wield as much influence. I think it's balanced out a little more now. You think of the state of Ohio, and you think of the Steel Belt in the Northeast, and a little bit Marion, Ohio as part of that. Columbus kind of being more like Indianapolis. It's a centrist town, and Cincinnati and Dayton. Those were the hubs at a time. That metropolitan area in Southern Ohio, and I don't think it's necessarily as important as it was. And it's important, but not as it was.
What do you think Governor Cox would think about Ohio now? I mean, it's hard for you to maybe to answer that for him, but purely speculative.
In some respects, I think he would be pleased with how Ohio's moved, but in some respects, I think he would be really surprised. If you throw out all the technological changes and so forth that would shock him to begin with, and just look at Ohio as a whole. I don't think he would be surprised to see that Ohio is still the center of the political world in terms of being a state that is always up for grabs.
What's the location of the symposium? People want to get there.
It is at Friday night. Will be at the Historic Harding Hotel in downtown Marion,
Okay.
267 West Center Street. The next day in the morning, there will be tours of the Harding Home and Memorial, as well as the Historical Society here in town. And then here at the Ohio State University at Marion on State Route 95 will be a number of different sessions looking in detail at Senator Harding at the time and Governor Cox and their campaigns and what their platforms were. And then of course that night dinner here on osumarion.osu.edu/Harding is
Okay.
the URL. And you can still sign up till the last minute for all the classroom sessions on Saturday and then in the morning for all the tours. The dinner on Friday and Saturday, there's food involved, so it's a little late in the game. But we welcome everyone up to Marion, Ohio, and that's where the crux of what we're going to talk about with James Cox is going to be during the classroom sessions.
Superb. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Where have you been?
I was shopping.
You've been out with Reuben, haven't you? It's all over your face.